Well, welcome to the Corona Dialogues, episode 5. And I think it was yesterday that SAP, the software giant, announced that it had fired the co-CEO, Jennifer Morgan. And to quite a few people, this came as a big surprise, given that SAP last year was lauded for promoting a woman to become a CEO of a major corporation. Well, I think maybe SAP has revealed its true face or true nature, and maybe things are back to normal. We'll see. But then on the other side, maybe it coincides with today's topic that the future is female. And the question, of course, how could this be? And this is something we'll talk about. And I'm very happy and excited that we have our special guest, Christopher Weber-Fürst, a colleague of mine for 2 years now. And he's an author. He's originally from Norway. He now lives in Munich. But maybe, Christopher, you can say a few things about yourself before we dive into our questions.
Okay. So I'm wearing this T-shirt, "The Future is Female," which, of course, is for a lot of people radical and provocative, which is supposed to be. So as you can see, I have a white hair, which means that I'm not so young anymore. And the white hair comes from age, but also from being through some really difficult times. What does it mean to be a grown-up, conscious, aware, mature man? And since I come from Norway, we had the 40% female quota introduced in 2003 for all public boards, which means that the public boards that did not have 40% female quota would be expelled from the stock exchange. So already a long time ago, I had a particular interest in being brought up the way that I was with the language that I use, a patriarchal father who made the rules. And of course, being a young age, I could not really fathom that. What did that mean? But then I studied sociology, and I got kind of into this identification of gender. I mean, we are either male or female, but then it's the psychological. How much do I connect to a masculine side, my feminine side? And then there's the social identification. Where do I belong in the hierarchy? And all of this builds up our identity. Who do I take myself to be? And how we use this identity to be in the world and how we communicate. And since I then, 2003, decided to have particular focus on career coaching for women, and I've done a lot of female executive talent management program, and to understand from their point of view, being a middle-aged white man, which might seem like a paradox that I am the one who's supposed to tell women and organizations how to start integrating more of those feminine values. I could call them female, but they're feminine because stereotypically we would say that they belong to women. But as men, we do have them too. But I just think that we need to learn to integrate them in our way of being to become leaders. Because what the world really needs now in these difficult times are leaders who have found their way to walk the talk and be congruent with their values and their real desires for the future, and design that kind of a organization, and also globally. How should the world, how does it ought to look like? What's true, what is right about this? And of course, in these times when we're experiencing so many challenges in the world, not with Corona, we have the climate change, we have plastic in the oceans, we are fishing the fish out of the water. The carbon dioxide makes the oceans more acidic, which means that they cannot produce as much oxygen, and so on and so forth. And also the diversity in nature. If you're looking at this, it looks kind of apocalyptic for the future. So my mission, my passion, my purpose with doing this is to, through better business, create a better world for a grandchildren-friendly economy. Okay. And in order to do so, we definitely need another way of leadership, a paradigm shift towards being in the service of humankind.
All right. well, thank you for the introduction. I mean, that was my first question I wanted to ask is like, what does a guy, speak about female leadership? And you just gave the answer. So thank you for this response. I have a question. I mean, you distinguish between female and feminine. Explain again, what's the difference between, say, female leadership or feminine, and what do you mean? What's your understanding?
Yeah, so I mean, we need to create some kind of language to have tools to discuss this. And of course, it's very stereotypical, but what we traditionally define with masculine and feminine is that the masculine is what we call transactional thinking. That's the linear way of thinking. So we have the task and we need to solve it. And with it comes the assertiveness, it's comes to leadership, it's comes to determination, it comes to taking decisions. But if you think about the feminine, the female, it's called a transformational, which is about transformation, which includes fairness, equality, harmony, community, cooperation, consensus. We do this together. I walk the extra mile. We mutually support, empower, and unfold each other. So it's like getting into the mind of the other, which is really, when it comes to this collective intelligence, relationship intelligence, social intelligence, research shows that women are more intelligent than we.
Okay. So when you're saying the future is female, you're basically saying the future is transformational?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, yes.
So you have to get a new t-shirt. The future is transformational.
That's nowhere near
Too long. No, but seriously, like, why is the future female? Why do why is it female?
Yeah, okay. So since I've been working with it for so many years, I have developed this kind of a language, which I'm sure for a lot of people sounds very theoretical. But so let me use this sentence that I've been doing exercising for a long time now, which I actually learned from Thomas Sattelberger, the previous CHRO of Deutsche Telekom. And he said, it is the male, masculine, patriarchal, hierarchical, authoritarian, left brain way of leadership based on individual merits, which is the old authoritarian hierarchical way of running an organization. And in that organization, it's only the male way of thinking that is implemented in the culture, and then there's no room for women to exert their leadership, because it's not tolerated. It's not okay. You don't talk about it. It's transactional. We just have to solve a task, and we do it the my way.
Well, SAP just proves the point.
Pardon?
SAP just proves this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I now look at in the States with Trump, and all the world. It could seem like there is a turn towards these kind of it's difficult to call them values, but they would probably call them values. But it's definitely not my values.
Okay. So the past or the present was still male. If the future is female, so the past and the present. I mean, what's the past? The male, and where are we right now? I mean, this is like in between, or is it both? Or?
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable, sound question. I think we're experiencing a paradigm shift towards a higher level of consciousness as a part of the human evolution. I mean, if you think about when we were hunters and gatherers, it was a very different society. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, then like 6,000 years ago, society, because we were more people, but the tribes around, they were competing towards each other. So they found out we had to do something. So the paradigm shift happened, and they developed into steadfast farmers. And then there's the power of men became the way that these societies were organized. So they were using women and children as a commodity to gain their power.
Well, talking about the present, I mean, the Corona crisis, I think, is it kind of a coincidence that countries led by women have done the fairest during the Corona pandemic?
Yeah.
Why is this? I mean, the countries, I'm referring to is, are Germany, Taiwan, New Zealand, Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Denmark.
Yeah.
Why is this the case?
Yeah, man, you kind of gave the answer yourself. Yeah, I think it is the meta perspective of thinking holistically, to see the whole picture, which is in my perspective, long-term thinking. We do this together, we become better together. I see you, you see me, and I think I'm a big fan of Coldplay, and they have this amazing song called Everyday Life. What in the world are we going to do? Listen to that, because if you watch the video on YouTube, there's a Ubuntu quote there says, "I am because we are." Right? You cannot be a human being unless you are with other human beings, and then you can decide what kind of a human do you want to be, what kind of human do you ought to be, to create fairness in this world. If you look at the economical development for the last 100 years, which Tom Piketty really described in his book, the gap between the poorest and the richest is becoming bigger and bigger, and so this, the people that are actually supporting this society to function, you know, the people in the hospitals, the people that are driving our lorries, working in supermarkets, you know, they hardly earn enough money to survive, and they right now in this period of time they are actually setting their life at stake for us, and they hardly become enough money to get by. So the unfairness of the distribution of wealth has come to this point where the gap is too big. So then when you ask the question about the corona, I truly believe that nature, that our planet, humankind, we are all a big ecological system that has the capacity to regulate itself back to balance. So that is part of what is happening.
Will it happen automatically, or what kind of leadership does it take? I mean, is it that like that an organization can promote and can promote this change, or will it just happen because the pressure is too great? What do you think?
That's a very relevant question, and I think the kind of leadership we need now is the grown-up, conscious, mature archetype of the king in us, the one who is really in the service of humanity. And you can use it as a metaphor that we all have a king in ourselves, and the women have a queen. And you can, like Carl Gustav Jung calls it, the DNA of our psyche. So you can connect to that and listen to your inner voice. What would I do if I were in the service of humankind? And metaphorically speaking, your team or your organization, and there's no ego in it. It is like having a deep conviction that I have something particular. I have a gift as a leader that I want to create through others, which would be something we can offer to the world that the world needs, which is like a noble purpose. And we can look at research, the organizations that are implementing this way of thinking in terms of retention, in terms of return on investment, in terms of being an attractive employer, in terms of the whole perspective of children, of the people working in this organization are doing great. There's less problems with psychological disorders or divorces and so on. I mean, it's absolutely totally clear, which the research done in Norway on these organizations that are doing this, it's very clear. So if you want a better world, if we want a world for our grandchildren, I mean, Yuval Noah Harari writes in his book that if we don't change this, it might actually happen that in 200 years there will be no more human beings on this planet.
So if we want to have a better life, we all move to Scandinavia.
Okay, I'll welcome you. Then I go back there too.
So talking again about say female leadership, and I mean, like I said, I mentioned the six language countries that are led by women. I mean, why do we need, against in one or two sentences, why do we need these female leadership qualities, or how do they differ from female leadership qualities, if we can call them qualities when we're talking about male leadership?
I think the basics here are that we are in this together. You know, the collective intelligence to see beyond the ego and be able to multitask. Mm-hmm. I think that's the quintessence of this: be better together and think long term. You know, I mean, if you look at business today, most people would say long term is maybe 6 months, and of course you cannot create a sustainable development in 6 months. I mean, this is a long term project. And what is fascinating me, since I've been studying this for 20 years, I mean, you said I've written books about this. I'm not saying my answers are right. I just want to bring this into debate. There's so much scientific evidence that leaders that intrinsically understand how important it is, and it's a part of democratizing the geopolitical economical system. This is the only true way of doing it. And those people who do that, you know, they outperform their competitors with, I can't remember the numbers, but it's like 300 or 400%. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, the CEO and the CFO, we need to earn money, but it depends on how you earn the money, which is sustainable and fair.
You don't necessarily need to earn money. You need to earn $1 more than you spend.
Yeah, of course.
The only thing that you need to do as an entrepreneur, and the rest is creating value for others.
Yeah, the truth. So the question is, how do you do that? And particularly now, as we see this paradigm shift actually occurring, I think we really are on the brink of finding a new paradigm shift. And when that paradigm shift happens, it takes a long time before it happens. And then all of a sudden, like in a situation like this, which where you can say I've been giving as a gift, someone would do something radical, but have the courage and the curiosity to ask those difficult questions. What is this future going to look like? And understanding that this is not something that I, as a leader, can create on my own. I have to do this collectively with my whole organization, because then everyone has a sense of, I am taking part in this, and I have a value, and I can make decisions so that I feel autonomous, creating value for others.
Well, you're raising the questions, you know, that this person, you know, will ask, you know, what will the future look like. Actually, it was the last one also what I keep iterating. Yeah. It's like, well, rather than asking this question, I mean, shouldn't we ask the question, how do we want to live? And of course, when you ask like guys, you know, traditional, you know, male leadership, they will give you different response than say holistically thinking people, you know, and not necessarily women, but you know who are, you know, how should I say, may I say evolved? You know, it doesn't really matter. It's like, you know, it's like, because like when I ask what the future will look like, I'm passive, but I want to be active. I want to take an active part in it.
So the thing is, we don't know what this future is going to look like. We have no clue. I'm reading this other book by a famous American female CEO, and she writes that the most famous futurists has come up with so many predictions, and the more famous they are, the more mistakes they make. So you know, there's no way you can predict what the future is going to look like. And if you look back in history, you know, there's so many flaws trying to predict the future. But what we can do, we can learn how to think collectively and co-create that future together on a very deep personal level that makes meaning to all of us. And that will make a different society, that will make different organizations, that will make different ways of working together. I mean, normally an organization, due to this old paradigm, are at an average only using 20% of its potential, and the best organizations maybe use 50. So you see, there's a huge potential here.
I have a question. I mean, so we I guess we all agree. Okay, there's, you know, there are really virtues in female leadership with responsibility, empathy, and you name it. You know, fairness. Okay, what about, say, us guys? You know, what about the guys? I mean, when I hear the future is female, I say, okay, so what about the male part of the population? Will they be left out? I mean, what happened to them?
Yeah, that's what I call the white elephant in the room. Because when I try to raise this question, most men immediately go into defense somehow and say, oh, that's not true. And some people get they get really aggressive, and because I think intrinsically there's some part in us that know this is true, but we don't know what that is. So I mean, I experience a lot of guys when I start talking about this, they feel ashamed because they realize knowing what this understands make them feel bad about themselves in the way that they have treated their wife, their kids, their employees, because there's a new understanding of the role that they have as leaders, whereas before they were unconsciously incompetent. And also, so all of a sudden you take away the veil before their eyes. And my experience as a coach for the last 4 years working with this, with top executives, not one of them has said that this is not something that they deeply, deeply can connect with when they know what it means for them in the way of wanting to be a leader, wanting to be that kind of a leader that they intrinsically know that they are, like wanting to be that king who is in the service.
I have a question, because of this is also like, because Kim just posted it in the chat, and she says like, men are always defensive. I sit on 8 boards in my community, and each one, including my church board, has a male issue in discussion. They just don't understand. They do feel bad. So the question I have is like, okay, how can we convince or, show these traditional guys that there's a better way? How can they, what does it take to take their hands and say, okay, let's cross this bridge together? What does it take?
We need to teach them curiosity to find out what does it mean for them, and also to support them in having the courage to speak their truth. My experience is that I haven't met one man who does not agree with this approach to leadership as a one-to-one person in one-to-one coaching. But as soon as they enter the collective room with other men, it's like they step into another role of subconsciously thinking, as a man, I cannot say this, I cannot be like this when I'm with other men. Mm-hmm. which I call the inner voice of the inner patriarch, because that goes back to the way how we define ourselves as an identity in a hierarchy. So when the CEO is a man, I mean, he makes the rules, and we're afraid to break those rules. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to provoke you a little bit some more. Maybe take this, say I'm the devil's advocate, I'm skeptical about it. And then say, well, look, if you look at business, and especially very successful businesses. I mean, okay, I agree with you that we need more women in leading positions in business. So if they just behave like guys, then everything is fine, and they can lead and succeed. Why is that statement then flawed?
I mean, that's my experience too. That women think they have to adapt and accommodate into taking that kind of a role in order to be successful, which is very often the opposite. I think my experience the last couple of years working with female executive talent management programs, top executives, female, among the future leaders of Airbus, for instance, which is, it's a high innovative company with an amazing products. And so I was doing this training with them for 1 year, coaching them and doing facilitation of team coaching. And I asked this woman, why do you think you were chosen to be a future executive in Airbus? And they said, I don't know. How come? And the problem is, working intensively with finding they are really powerful women, extremely good leaders. So they work through this program, and then they go back into this old culture, which is the male, masculine, patriarchal, and there's no room for exerting what they have learned. And sometimes even they have the feeling of being boycotted, because they are much better leaders than men. And when they start exerting this leadership role, what happens with them? Some stories that I've heard is that although they're now supposed to be the future executive, the top 25 in Airbus, what happens is that one of them even flunked the assessment center because he was too good.
Too good in what respect?
As a leadership, being very clear about what was her leadership style, what are the goals, and her way of presenting itself were so autonomous and so authentic.
Well, that's a good point. You know, so what does it take? And this is a question for all of you know, what have been your experience like? How can we find our own authenticity, our own human autonomy? What do you recommend, and what have been your experiences? And I'd like to actually, you know, give this question to everyone in our chat room here.
Okay, so I'd love to share that quite short actually, but you know, I read a lot. This is really my passion, to work with human and organizational flourishment. And a particular book called Reinventing Organizations, written by Frederick Laloux, who used to be a consultant in McKinsey. I mean, he just basically said that you know, the way McKinsey work is not working anymore. And then he quit his job and he did this huge research work and came up with the teal mindset, which is about value-based leadership. And he used the models of Richard Barrett and Ken Wilber. And what's the Barrett model, which totally fascinates me, is a very logical model of how we personally develop to high levels of consciousness through our personal development. So the difference here is to become aware of who is the autonomous, authentic I, is to be aware of what are my ego needs. I mean, we do have ego needs. We need to be financially secure. We need to be in good relationships. We need to get recognition for what we do. And as long as that is in place, we can develop further. And then we need to develop a sense of what is it that why am I here? What's my particular gift? You know, why am I here in this world? I have a life purpose. So to find out what that is based on your core values, then you can start to understand who is the real I. Because if you don't understand what that is, basically, in my opinion, you're just 95% a mental construct. That it comes from the ego, that comes from the past. And if you stay in the past, you will take decisions based on the past, and you will not really be able to see what is possible for us to achieve collectively using those female values to create the kind of a world that we ought to live in.
I mean, right now, would be on the individual level and realizing, okay, what your ego needs, you know, where's your ego, etc. But I'm looking at an organization, like bigger corporation, and what does it take for, you know, this organization to thrive? And I do believe that if we look at the incentive structure, you know, and management, this is definitely, how should I say, if you change the incentive structure, it can make a big difference. You know, as long as the incentive structure, you know, bonuses, etc., as long as it is still rooted in the traditional male-dominated world, I think we're not going to see any progress. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Spot on.
So, but what kind of impediments do we face in order to change this incentive structure? I mean, as Chris and you're also talking to some major corporations. Why is it that the people still trying to block any initiatives to change the incentive structure for, you know, to have a more holistic view?
I think underlying is just, you know, an unconscious, just false perception of the nature of the human being. As in, there's just no paradigm of honest trust into one another. And it's much simpler to run systems like they're running today than a much more complex system that would then really drive everything that Christopher's talking about. And I think it's fear of complexity in a lot of ways.
Yes, very true. And it's called the profitability paradox. The one who's most focusing on earning money are so focused on earning money that they forget to create a kind of a culture where people can flourish and develop and have a sense of meaning in what they do. Whereas the organizations that has I mean, I think it comes down to leadership, that somebody who wants to be a leader has that psychological understanding of human nature and wants to encourage and develop people.
And there's still the underlying belief that there's something like individual performance in this world.
Yeah.
We're only going to create performance when we're connected with one another. There's no such thing as individual performance, you know, let alone measuring it. I mean, it's just a sheer impossibility, and that's been like that for decades. Yeah. And still, fundamentally, it hasn't been changed. And it's also because, you know, those those in charge, those who could change it, are the big beneficiaries as far as finance and personal security are concerned.
Yeah.
So we have a catch-22 there in a lot of ways. And we've all been in business long enough to know that a lot of managers will much rather drive their company to bankruptcy and take a big hit with them rather than really leading the company into a new paradigm.
Yeah.
Has the Corona crisis changed this? Or do you see a chance that the Corona crisis has been changing this?
I believe it's on the way to changing it. I don't think it has endured long enough for it to be already, seriously paradigm relevant. But we're definitely thrown back on thinking what does create value for others and what doesn't. At the moment, it's this talk of systemic relevance. I don't think that's like the right term. But what creates value for humans and what doesn't? And if the crisis really, makes us aware of that fact, as in how much is my work worth in combination with others, that'd be a great step forward. I don't think we're there yet, though.
If I can comment on that, I totally agree with you. But since I do work as a strategic advisor and executive coach, I do now, because everything is postponed or canceled, have to do all my work on virtual media. And whereas before that was kind of an emergency solution, now we have to do it. And it works beautifully because all of a sudden people have a different attitude towards doing this, and we connect and we're present in a different way. But what I hear is particularly from men who now have to work from home. All of a sudden they understand the implication of what does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a husband? What it means to be home? What does it mean to be homeschooling my children? And they said, wow, it's really exhausting, but I love it. I don't want to go back to work. I want to do much more working from home because I contribute with something that intrinsically I felt was important for me. But now that I'm doing it, I'm really insisting on doing more of that. So for a lot of people, particularly men, let's see if this could have an impact. But I mean, if we're talking about a paradigm shift, it's not going to happen overnight. But this might be the period where this paradigm shift will be accelerated, and things will move on.
Now we're on the boat there. I mean, I'm a consultant too, and so is Thomas. And we're all asked to reinvent ourselves and our business models and everything. And I don't really totally agree with you in that everything works beautifully. In our world, it doesn't. Because I think I'm really looking forward, because everybody's now raving on about the wonderful world of digital communication and whatnot. And I believe there's so much content between human beings in direct interaction that cannot be conveyed in a digital way. I'm just waiting for that. I'm waiting for that point in time, and that's what I'm saying. The crisis hasn't really reached that point yet. Everybody's praising the new possibilities, but I believe in the human-to-human interaction. If we were all in one room together, if we shared a cup of coffee, looks, feels, everything that just that bonds us together, it'd be a different thing. It's great to converse with you like this, but there's so many things just that we're losing while we're doing this that could be so much more powerful if we were actually physically present.
Absolutely.
I hope I didn't give you the impression that I'm a digital guy. I'm definitely not. I'm a digital dinosaur.
Pure jealousy on my part, if you were. That's not good enough.
Yeah, so that's why we're talking about human business. Like, of course, the trust in singularity, digitalization, artificial intelligence is, in my opinion, also a part of this male masculine way of running organizations. So thinking technology can solve everything, but then they forget about that we are human beings. We are for sure differently motivated than an algorithm. And who's doing this programming of the algorithm? How do they work? If you start focusing on how do they function, it raises a lot of questions.
Well, getting back to the question, like what can a man do sort of to develop sense of leadership, self-ownership, and all of that? I just want to share a quick story where I learned it, and I learned it with horses. I hadn't thought it was possible, but I was invited from a friend to a horse workshop, and I said, okay, I'm going to invest this weekend because this friend is awesome. This friend has always only ever just advised me well. And I went there, and I've had this horse, and I was dealing with this horse, and I could feel the horse would would just instantaneously stop if I weren't completely and fully with myself. And the horse will only connect to me when the horse feels that I'm within, you know, the realms of my own power, that I'm actually fully conscious. And every single little bit of unconsciousness, the horse would immediately punish by just stopping behind it, wouldn't follow me. Which is where when I learned, okay, if I'm not with myself, I have no chance of leading anybody else.
Yeah.
And I mean, that to me was the most powerful experience as far as, you know, myself and leadership was concerned.
I guess get goosebumps when you're saying that, because I grew up with horses, and and also for the clients that that want to do it, I take them to horse coaching, because the experience you have to be totally present and autonomous and connected with you, or else the horse will just stand there looking at you, and it will do nothing. Which is like you have to lead.
And the question is that a female quality within myself that I activated, or is that just, you know, I think Kim was writing it earlier, that it's always a balance between the one thing and the other. And I think that's really true. And it's not, it's not female. The future is more female than what it is now. And it's a perfect balance. Like everything should be in balance and natural flow between the male and the female, the dark and the light and everything. And the question, I think men are struggling to just fully open up to themselves, because we were just conditioned by society, parents, and our system of marriage and everything to just function well, not make mistakes, hide away when something goes wrong within ourselves, not cry and whatever. And, you know, I think it just takes the sense of opening up one's spirit to wonders of the world to be able to make others follow.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that in, because that's an important part of what I do, to find in context which of those psychological qualities should you use. Sometimes you have to use the masculine, sometimes you have to use the feminine, and find the right balance, being in yang, that works for you. Thank you for bringing it. That's very important.
Yeah, it was actually was interesting. Christopher, you remember it was in 2019 when we were in Davos. We talked to, let me double check the name of this fellow. One sec. And he talked about, you know, what kind of leadership qualities do we need? And Shapiro it was, the ninja warrior or something about, and he talked about it takes decisiveness, of course, and the need to be decision friendly. It takes courage, engagement, but then it takes empathy, you know, that you're willing to cooperate, that you have to have curiosity, and, you know, networking, collaboration, intuition, and then what you say, knowing yourself, knowing thyself. And I think this is one of the greatest challenges we face, you know, as humans, finding ourselves. What you said, Christian, is like, I cannot lead unless I know myself, or, you know, I've met myself, you can say, you know, I think this is how you said it. And it's like, yeah, I still have a long way to go, even though I admit that this crisis has really taught me a lot along these lines.
So there's an American leadership researcher saying that becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. Easy to say, but very difficult to do.
Say again?
Becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. Easy to say, but difficult to do.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Donna, you want to add something, because you are muted?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I really appreciate what you did there, Christian, because I've worked with horses for decades, and what they're brilliant at is in terms of balance, is you have to sense them. You cannot use your will, because they're 1,500 pounds and they've got will too. You're just going to lose. So it's, you know, they really teach a more dynamic communication relationship where you're listening and sensing, and then they're responding, and that you're always working in that kind of lovely equilibrium. And I had a couple of days ago a conversation with somebody who asked me about the masculine and feminine in organizations. And my question was, how many companies took the time out in this COVID thing just to stop and reflect and be quiet and be still and listen before they started panicking and pushing all the firing buttons, but just to stop and reflect. And it is that dynamic that you did, you know, with working with these horses. they bring more of yourself online because you've got it. It's just nobody's, regular day to day where you're mentally going through everything. You don't call forth those capabilities. But in a relationship with an animal like that, you pretty much have to. I organized something in 2008 with a bunch of consultants down in Arizona, and we took them into that conversation. Just as you experienced, I want to go from here to here. You're free to do what you want, and I can't will you to get there. So I have to be in alignment with myself, because otherwise the horse won't follow. Why would they? They're prey animals. They know better. So really beautiful way to learn that and experience it.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot lie to a horse. It's not possible.
Well, the left side of the brain just won't be good enough to take a horse after you. Just the left side of the brain is, I'm not saying it's useless, but you'll definitely, your holistic self.
And what's interesting about how I've done it, you take, in the session with the horse, you take a video of the horse and it's a person leading it, and then use that afterwards to make them reflect on what happened when you were trying to be a leader for that horse. And the learning of that is amazing. It's so beautiful.
I remember breaking down in tears the night that happened.
Yeah.
After I reflected on everything that had happened that day, that just completely shook me over. It was a reinvention of myself in a lot of ways. It was very just awesome in the actual sense of the word.
So what I'm getting out of this is, thank you. I mean, there's no such thing as serendipity or synchronicity, because I love horses and I wanted to do horse training, but my ex-wife, she was so allergic to horses, so I couldn't do it. But now I'm not with her anymore, so now I will go and take that certification course for horse coaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, in Germany, they have the original where it all started, which is Horse Dream. That's where it all started. The equine.
You know Melba Shetler?
I don't know them personally. I just know that it started there, and then there's different organizations, and of course it's come out in different ways. And then typical with horse people, sometimes it's in alignment, sometimes it's not. So you have to be pretty discerning. But it does sound like you hit the right one there, Christian. Where did you go?
I just get back to our original subject. Not that we've seriously veered off, but do you think, Christopher, that we need more women in companies, or do you feel that we need more female in companies? As in, is it an issue that's going to just solve itself? I mean, you've gotten the experience in Norway since 2003, as I've understood, with the 40% quota. Couldn't men? I mean, it's pretty much of a coincidence that we were thrown on the planet as men and Donna was thrown on the planet as a woman. We all have both elements in us, what we know. Do you think just more women that will then adapt to the system being better men, as we had, gathered previously, will solve it?
No, because it's about competence. You have to find the best candidate for the job, and if that's a man, and if it's a woman, yes. But we also need to think differently in how we recruit people, and also to create a leadership program that really supports the most talented women. I mean, there's a lot of people who want to be leaders, but a lot of them, to be honest, they don't have the capacity to become that kind of a leader that the future organization needs.
I'm just going to ask the question differently. Do women find it easier to connect to themselves than men, generally? Do we feel that?
And on a different perspective, yes, because I think when I refer to that, it comes back to what are the typical female qualities, like collective intelligence, and the team's organization that has implemented that way of thinking make better decisions. They might take you longer, but in the long run, they are better decisions, and they have a different way of being with
thinking of it from the point of genetics. I mean, there's this one little Y, all right, that makes there's a Y here. That makes that difference. Okay.
Yeah.
That one little Y, and other than that, we're pretty much the same. And you're saying that one little tiny piece makes the decisive difference about being able to, more effectively open up to oneself?
Great question. I have the discussions all the time, because what they believe we cannot know that. And if you look at neuroscience, you look at epigenetics, and some different types of psychology, somebody says it's pure genetics, and others say it has nothing to do with genetics. But how come we know? The only thing we know is how we can relate to ourselves. What kind of a person do I really want to be? I mean, it's a great question, but I think if you find the right, if you're going back to the last question, if you find the right people with the right competence, regardless of men and women, to find the perfect balance, because also what research shows from Stanford is that the best organizations are those who has a perfect mixture of male and female, who find that synchronicity, because we are much more alike than we are different.
Sorry, Thomas, just quickly. I remember the sentence very well. You know, an intelligent individual will always fail versus a dumb system. So if you're putting the perfect person into that particular position and leave the system unchanged, what's going to happen to that person? They're saying that you have to,
I mean,
how do we change the system as such? And I think that's really what we're in with Corona and everything that lies ahead.
Yeah,
that very, very fundamental system change. It's also going to come from humans, but it's the much broader picture than sending one very talented individual. You're speaking of talent. This very talented individual onto a certain post.
Yeah. Just a short comment, because in 2017 I was invited to United Nations to give a keynote talk on how to accelerate female leadership, and there were 400 people from all over the world, and just to get into that kind of a energy that this is what we really need. That was just amazing, and so, which was, I think, also a sign of that we are experiencing a paradigm shift. But paradigm shifts takes time, and of course it's not only about one person entering into an organization, but we need to accelerate the whole female leadership also on a higher level of management, because what happens is that so many women, they don't want to be identified and work in that male masculine patriarchal hierarchical organization.
Sorry, Thomas, I cut you off.
No, it's like what I experienced is like actually working in for a huge corporation where there were mostly engineers, and I still told them like, we need to have women on the team. Otherwise, it's just going to be, it's not going to work. And they looked at me and said, well, but we don't have that many. It's like, well, okay, fine, doesn't matter, just like you solve it. Because otherwise, if they're just male engineers, you will not be too creative. And they were first skeptical, but they changed it. And then there were 2 women, out of 10, team of 10. But it made a huge difference. The atmosphere just, was different. They asked different questions. They reacted differently. And it's just like, yes, there could be some scientific reasoning for it. It doesn't matter. It's like, I noticed like when it's a mixed team, the results are much better. And there is less competition. It's not so much about the ego. It's more about the equal. It's more about the we. It's purpose driven, etc. And it's just like, I have been observing this, again and again in various industries. And so I think, where would I start? I would always start like, okay, if it's not possible to do it on a high level, at a corporate level, okay, then start with a project, one project at a time. And at the same time, explain to the corporate managers, okay, this is what we're doing differently. We have mixed teams, and these are the outcomes. And one of the reasons, like, because we have mixed teams and we're trying to bring everyone together, we just don't focus on the ego. We look at the whole thing. And so that's what I think that can be a small step. This is something we all can contribute to, unless, where we're dealing with CEOs and they listen to our advice and they just run. However, there's a huge pressure for them to conform to traditional values, if we can call them values. That's why I believe there is a matching of projects.
If you look at the work of Otto Scharmer, who's just leading from the emerging future, and tap into what's that going to look like, and we don't know what it's going to look like because we can't do that. So what he says, our role as leaders is to be a part of that co-creating that kind of a future that is emerging, which is the collective way of thinking, which, in my opinion, we on this planet, we haven't learned to think collectively like they do in Ubuntu. And I am because we are.
So we haven't learned it. So that means like we have to change the educational system, or where do we start?
Yes, that's a very good point to start. But it would be maybe, in my opinion, great that we as men took that initiative to be that change maker.
We guys, we take the initiative, or who's taking the initiative?
Yeah, to see to that everyone on this planet has the same rights and possibilities that everyone else. Which in this world, I mean, in my opinion, we're not living in a democracy. Most people on this planet do not have the human rights by definition. And if we're going to reach the 2030 goals of Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, in my opinion, the 16 others will not happen unless we have the opportunity that everyone has the same right to education, to clean water, to food, to education, which is not the case today.
Is it not a compelling thought? I mean, I've looked at your T-shirt, Christopher.
Yeah.
And I immediately thought I want one. And I think if we were to constitute a circle of 30 men, I'm saying 20, that's an arbitrary number, 20 to 30 men, going out and saying the future has to be female, all very accomplished people like ourselves, that create something that's completely, that's a huge hack into the system, that there's 20 to 30 middle-aged men, diversity, take a little bit, okay? You just go out and say, okay, basically us as men, we have managed to fuck this up to the point that we're at, and we need the new paradigm. And it can't be male, it has to be balanced between male and female. You can go into details later, but just for the sake of creating an awareness for this issue, that men step forward and claim the future needs to be more female.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I can see this. I mean, you know, Vorsprung at work is very crazy now, so that you can just like give out these T-shirts next time when you have a meeting with your clients, and they will be somewhat speechless.
At work, it's about us. It's about the planet.
Okay, well, yeah.
This is my other T-shirt that I was actually thinking of wearing today.
I thought it was equity.
Equality champion, yes. There's actually at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the Female Quotient, they have the equality launch, and it's all about, you know, these topic of equality and the future is female. Next year, Christian, if the World Economic Forum actually takes place, if you have a chance to go there, this is definitely a must go to place, you know, because they have some very excellent panels and wonderful people there. But I agree with you that the future is female, in the sense that it's a chance for us to become, how should I say, find ourselves, our human core. It's not about male versus female. It's about us. It's about so I'd say like it's the future is human, or it's supposed to be human. But I think I agree with you that also when you say the future is female, it's definitely more provocative, and it's people. They pay more attention, especially guys.
I mean, you can always elaborate. The future has to be more female, and there has to be balance in everything. But to create, you know, I'm thinking in marketing terms, to create like a serious boom, that there's a nucleus of guys that claim the future needs to be female. I think that's really powerful, because I mean that's something that the system doesn't expect. That's just a rule game hack.
So what are we going to do from here on?
I think if the outcome could be what Christian suggested, that would be amazing. So I'm in.
So the question is like, where can we do this?
Yeah, I mean, Christian was saying, if we get together like 20, 30 men and started to create an awareness of this, I think we could have a huge impact.
Okay. I'm just, okay. Let me think on this, and I'll get back to you in the next 24 hours.
That would be great. Yeah. Looking also, checking the time, since time is almost gone. First of all, you know, thank you, Christopher, so much for your insights, and thank you all for this wonderful, very inspiring dialogue again. And I will share with you the recording. I will have it on YouTube by early next week, probably again much faster for you to share. And there's another session I'd like to invite you to. Actually, it's taking place tomorrow. And hold on, let me switch to different. Here it is. And it's another webinar I will be hosting tomorrow. It's a 3-steps process to finding your purpose in life, community, and work. And it goes along a little bit, you know, what we talked about a little bit, but it talks about motivation, vision, and practice. on the individual, on the community level, and the, say, corporate or business level, and bringing it all together. So this actually takes place tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Europe, and 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving time. And there will be other events taking place next week. And you can find those in the Facebook group, Love Life Work, and also on my Motivate to Be Facebook page, events. And so next week, Wednesday in the evening, I will be hosting a webinar on das Unternehmen als Mensch. Basically, it's about human business. And I'm still thinking about actually also hosting a webinar in English about the same topic about human business. So this probably will take next week, Thursday. But that's not guaranteed. Maybe the week after. I haven't decided yet. So on this token, I like to again thank you all, and you know, it was great dialogue again. Thank you so much. There will be another one next week, Wednesday. The topic hasn't been decided yet, so I'm thinking of something like education, the educational system. But the one thing, and one I thought that popped up again last week, we talked about vulnerability. Today we talked about, okay, the guys that they have to break their own ice, finding yourself. So maybe it also would be good to talk about this. What does it take to find our true autonomy, our true authenticity? And this could very well be a topic worthwhile talking about. But I will let you know in due time. So any remaining questions, feedback?
No, just huge thankfulness for a very well spent hour.
Yes, thank you very much. It was great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, you too. And thank you, Thomas, for inviting me to talk about my life purpose. And it's so rewarding and so interesting to get different kinds of feedback, because, like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. And so I'm so into it that I need people to reflect on what this is about and get other impacts. So this was, for me, really rewarding. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch in the next 24 hours.
Alrighty.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. Stay well, and see you all very soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.